Welcome back to a brand new episode of the Smeeple Podcast. Today's feature is Jackson Locklear. Jackson has been in the hospitality industry for over 20 years and has worked coast to coast, supporting restaurants, hotels, and resorts in person and virtual. He's worked in James Beard award-winning concepts and also has Michelin experience. Most notably, he's worked with world-renowned chef and humanitarian Jose Andres. Here's Calvin and Jackson now.
All right, welcome to the Smeeple Podcast. Today we have Jackson with us. Jackson, I loved reading about you on the Smeeple app and your background, but I'll let you do more of the talking. Give us the full background of who Jackson is.
Yeah, so first off, thanks for having me, guys. Glad to be a part of Smeeple and, looking forward to some great things in the future with you guys. My name's Jackson Locklear. I'm originally from a small town outside of Savannah, Georgia, called Stilson, Georgia. We've got a stop sign, no stoplight. And, I've been a chef since, I've been cooking since about 98. Been a chef, we'll say probably since 2002. A couple of kitchen stints in between there. Went to culinary school for a short stint, kind of cut my teeth here in Atlanta, Georgia, where I'm located at currently. Moved back home and got involved with a number of different startups in the Statesboro area at Georgia Southern University, was part of a number of different restaurant openings. Actually kind of started my career before going to Atlanta with a restaurant opening and worked for the university. Georgia Southern University is one of their executive chefs on campus. Over an entire food hall on campus, and then opened up a fine dining restaurant with a couple of graduates from the Culinary Institute of America, probably the only fine dining restaurant in Statesboro at that time, give or take. And then from there, decided that I would, try it in New York. So first time I ever flew on an airplane, took a one-way ticket. I had a good friend of mine that I'd connected with on Facebook. We'd been out of contact for a number of years, and he was in New York and was like, if I can make it here, you can. So he was in the city, and I took a job in the Hamptons, not realizing that the Hamptons were about 2.5 hours away from the city. I thought he was going to be like my neighbor. I thought,
right,
Queens.
Yes.
This is before, smartphone and Waze and all that. So I had a printed MapQuest and literally caught the last LIR train up to East Hampton. I didn't even know where I was going to sleep that night. And went into Italian restaurant Cheetah Nova under Chef James G. Probably the busiest restaurant I'd ever seen, and I've seen some really busy restaurants. And coming in the middle of the summer in the Hamptons is absolutely crazy. Such a culture shock for me, not just from the airplane ride, but also New York, and then the Hamptons on top of everything. And ended up staying up there for about 7 years or so. I did a couple of stints back and forth between some other locations and took a couple of winters off and ran 2 different restaurants at Telluride Ski Resort in Colorado. Had to ski to and from work, snowmobile my food up from a commissary kitchen a couple days a week. Was part of the grand opening. I was the opening chef for Bon Vivant restaurant, still there, French Bistro. And, great experience. Colorado, absolutely beautiful. Telluride really just opened my mind to a lot of new possibilities. And then from there, I had the opportunity to go back to the Hamptons, but my chef, James G., once again, he had started working with Jose Andres. And he was with Jose Andres at Aleo Bethesda, his first restaurant in D.C. And so, I was like, hey, I'm leaving Colorado. I'd actually blown out my knee skiing, so I had to leave the ski season a little early. But Jose was opening up the bazaar at South Beach. So I made that quick transfer. So went from the mountains to South Beach.
Wow.
Culinary had really afforded me a great opportunity to travel and see parts of the world that, I might not have ever seen and kind of expand my mind to not just different food, but different cultures and different ways of living. And then from working with Jose and at the time, Think Food Group, which would now be Jose Andres Group, worked with Ruben Garcia, Aitor Zavala, Jorge Hernandez, some of his, just most brilliant chefs, all El Bulli alum. And from there, I started doing consulting. My first project was with Andre Balazs property in Miami, working with the Standard Hotel. And then from there, did some work here in Atlanta. Have done some things coast to coast. Been a part of helping ghost kitchens open up. Have done remote consultative support from things as little as building out costing sheets, prep list, opening, closing checklist, those kind of really simple operational items, to full on research, where, we're really diving deep into menu development. And then, during the consulting years, I took a little bit of a path and ended up in recruiting. So was with Aerotech Recruiting for a number of years, and some other recruiting companies as well. So recruited for Gulfstream Aerospace, CDC in Atlanta. And then 2020, the start of 2020, I had the bright idea of both feet back into the business. And we all know what 2020 brought us. We shall not speak of it.
Right.
But from there, got some great experience working at some country clubs, a part of another restaurant group here in Atlanta, was part of their R&D team. And now currently I'm supporting 2 catering companies here in Atlanta. One is a tier 1 market with full, immersive experience capabilities, highly focused in South Asian cuisine. So South Asian weddings, Indian weddings, a large part of our business. And then we have another tier 2 model, which is more of our kind of, lack of a better way to explain it, meat and potatoes.
Right.
And so, we run those both concurrently under the same group. And while doing that, I'm also supporting a number of tech companies as well from a consultant advisory position as a culinary consultant. One of those focusing in on some hiring and then or staffing needs, and the other one focusing in on recipe database build-outs.
Right. So it doesn't sound like you have a lot of experience. So right, yeah, it's like, holy cow! So you've gone right. You've traveled the nation, right? Been mentored or learned under some of the greats. It sounds like, right? Like it's just incredible. What in a career like that, and with so many different positions, are you? Is the step that you're at now the like what you've worked for, and this is everything that you've wanted, and you wouldn't want to go back to a spot? Because I hear a lot of people saying, I've had so many different experiences. If I could do it all over again, I'd want to stay in the Hamptons the whole time, or I'd want to go back out to Colorado and ski. And, what is your thoughts when people are trying to map out their career? That you have an awesome, map that have taken you to all these different places and whatnot. Do you believe that's the right path to go? Is it better for some to stay where they are and just stay there the rest of the time? Does it matter the personality? What are your thoughts?
It really does matter the personality. I, especially now, given kind of the state of the state, if you would, times we are kind of tough. When I moved to the Hamptons, it was right at 2008. So kind of that first housing market, issues that were going on. And I was really insulated. I was very blessed, because I was in the bubble of the Hamptons. So I was on the upward move. And then when I would come home, I'm seeing businesses close and things of that nature. And I'm just, I was a little oblivious to it. One, because of where I was, and 2, because of just the amount of hours, and dedication that I had to the job. I get very singularly focused when I take on a job. Every person's different. I kind of, my path, that's all I can truly speak on is my path. I really did take the Anthony Bourdain advice of not chasing the money. At times I did, but really early in my career, through my 20s, definitely, I was really looking at experience and exposure and what could I put into my toolkit, right?
Yeah.
It's all about building out that toolkit for me. Sometimes not knowing what the end goal was, but just knowing that, hey, if I get this experience, I get this knowledge, I make these connections, and I hold myself in a professional manner and always try my hardest, that eventually good things will happen because of that.
Right.
So, any advice that I would give is, everybody's got a different situation, right? Finances right now, I think, are a larger determining factor on how some people might be starting their career.
Sure.
But, I would definitely say that when you have the opportunity, if you have the opportunity and the means to give yourself that wide, diverse exposure, that would be, my main recommendation. But at the same time, there are some folks who, hey, if you want to be a sushi chef, if you want to focus in South Asian, you really have to dedicate your entire life and career to that. I would definitely say that you might not be serving yourself well if you're not getting some of that exposure to understand what else is going on in the business and what else is going on in the industry. Picking up some shifts where you're working front of the house pick up some shifts working with your social media person, understand how that impacts the business and what you can be doing as well. And once again, this is, more of an entrepreneurship mindset. Some people, it is just, hey, dial in, be the best pastry chef you can be, and also through my career, I did a number of stages as well. So just going and working and observing, really networking in the industry. And sometimes those days when you're in there just helping a chef peel potatoes and you're watching everything else, that can be as beneficial as 3 months, working on the line.
Right. And that's what I was going to ask you. In your culinary world, to be good, is it more education or is it more experience?
So I like to think it's more experience, and especially with AI today, I don't know how many cooks are really utilizing AI to its full potential. But the education is there. The resources are there. We have smartphones, which we didn't have, back when I was coming up through the ranks. We were pen and papering, different ratios and things of that nature. But the 10,000 hour rule is in place for a reason, right? 10,000 hours, around that number is what experts have said it takes to become an expert. So with that in mind, the hands-on experience is crucial, knowing how fast you are with a knife, those knife skills and things like that. But at the same time, that experience without that full understanding of why you're doing what you're doing can sometimes maybe prevent you from that next level up.
Right. Have you dived into the world of AI and menu creation? Have you merged those two? Can you explain a little bit about that?
So without giving away all my secrets.
Oh, sure. No, please don't. Yeah.
No, I say that jokingly. With AI, I think it's a great starting point. It's a great resource in the same way that Google was a resource and still is. Being able to go and look through what's out there. I've been able to use AI, especially, Chat GPT is obviously the big one out there. But I can go in as far as detailed my fermentation processes, which, Renee Redzepi out of Noma, the long-standing restaurant in the Netherlands, which focused so much on fermentation. I can type in things like make a garum, make a lactobacillus fermentation of porcini mushrooms and onion. And it would give me those ratios and how to do that because I typed in the style of Renee Redzepi.
Get out. Right.
So you can go that far and get that detailed into it. But once again, it's a starting point. And it's the same way as we're first taught in school with computers, garbage in, garbage out.
Absolutely.
You have to kind of train your AI to your likings.
Yep.
But it can do a lot for you in that regard. It can help you. Instead of using a template, sometimes I'll say, hey, here are my ingredients. Here are the amounts. This is the item I'm trying to create, and it'll give me a good starting point. And then you still have to go in and fine tune it. But as far as a time saving, it's great for that. Or as far as, researching, now I'm focused in on South Asian with our brand. And while I'm learning a lot and, definitely have a lot of knowledge and experience there's, I think, 35, 37, something like that, nation states in India. And each one is different. You can have the same name of a different dish 35 times and it's going to be different regionally. So getting that depth of knowledge out of AI is something that I'm kind of working with my AI bot to help, develop what that database looks like.
It's fantastic that you're doing that. We had an earlier podcast talking to an individual that's an AI specialist, and he was saying it's not a 100% tool. It's a 70% tool. It will help you. That 30% is all the different. The 30% is what differentiates you between those that use it as the 100% versus those that are true experts and using it to elevate them. Right. So I love how you bring that up in regards to, I'm an amateur chef, as in I can cook pancakes on Saturday and I follow the same recipe. And for some reason, my kids like it. Other than that, I have no idea. I'm sure I could go into Chat GPT, give me a recipe, but in regards to how to cut it correctly, AI is not going to show me that, or it might even tell me, but I still don't have the fine knife skills to be able to do that. So how would you encourage people that are looking to get in their foot in the door in the culinary world? Is there a place for AI in the beginning, or should you wait to use it after you learn the foundation?
I mean, each person's a little bit different, right? Okay. So it kind of, once again, depends on the person. I would say that if I was to do it again, I would, knowing what I know now, of course, being a little bit of a cheat, but using AI with what I know now, I would definitely invest into, I don't know, the repetition actions, are what's crucial to being fast in the kitchen, if you
Sure.
would.
Right.
But then maybe understanding why we do it that way, understanding the why behind things, I think would be a bigger thing for AI. Like, for example, when we are asking you to dice something all the same uniform size, yes, part of it is presentation, but it's also part of the cooking process. If you have different size items, if you have a potato that's 1 inch by 1 inch, a potato that's a ½ inch by ½ inch, and a potato that's a 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch, and you put them all in a pot at the same time, they're going to cook in different at different rates.
Right. So what do you recommend? Because I make them 2 inches and 1 inches in the same pot. No, right. That's why my wife, I need her desperately for cooking. What would you say in regards to the, someone that does want to elevate their own menu in their own household, right? So ignoring the not the restaurant side, but more of the household. Someone that's able to book you on Smeeple and say, hey, we have a busy life cycle or like a pretty busy schedule. I do all the cooking. Do you have any tips and tricks in regards to really how to help the menu process, occur within a household? Does that make sense?
Yeah, kind of. I think I know what you're asking for. So if I were to recommend AI for a household, I would definitely say that first utilize the AI function of grabbing your empirical data, right? Maybe take your last 90 days worth of grocery receipts, put them into, AI, right? See what your trend is, see what you're buying the most of, what most frequent of is. You can go a little bit further from that and then actually look at how much you're spending, so you can start to look at your budget. But more so from menu development, you want to know what are the most common items that you're purchasing and going through, because it's like jazz music, right? Like, this is how I would just describe Indian cuisine too, but it's like jazz music. They're all the same notes. A chicken is a chicken, but it can be cooked a million different ways.
Wow.
Tomatoes are tomatoes, but they can be cooked, a million different ways. So taking all of those musical notes, if you would, all of those ingredients, and then asking AI, hey, here's what we typically cook, right? I typically cook, chicken with, tomato, lemon butter sauce, right? But then it also is registering that you also have onion that you typically buy. You also go through 2 cans of artichokes a month. And so it's going to take those items, ask AI, can you create me a menu excluding these menu items? Give me 6 or 7 different options based on the ingredients that you've seen. Wow. And that will help to point you in the right direction and give you a little bit more variety.
Right. No, that's fantastic. How do you see restaurants where they're at today with menu creation versus, and ignoring the AI side, just moving on just where people are, where do you see restaurants today in regards to menu creation, the foods that they serve versus, where restaurants were 30 years ago? Still same exact culture, same flavor, or do you see some innovation within the menu world?
Right. So when we're looking at restaurants from today, as opposed to 30 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, there continues to be that creative, innovative thing that's happening. But now what I'm starting to see is nostalgia is now creation, right? Nostalgia is new again. So some of these trends that we saw in the 90s, they're starting to come back. You have some restaurants that have been around since the 70s that have the same menu, the same items, and it's just kind of tried and true. So it's really a wide variety. The advice that I tend to give is unless you have a truly chef-driven program where you have a true artist on hand, and an artist that can manage and work with people, that's a real big thing. When talking to business owners, is understanding what your chef's capabilities are outside of the food. Unless you have those, and they're more rare than what you think. It really is about finding your niche, right? Finding your voice, finding, hey, does our restaurant, do we want to focus in on pub food? Do we want to focus in on, who are we competing with? Do we want to focus in on breads? Do we want to focus in on gluten-free? Do we want to focus on Italian? Do we want to focus on new Italian? Do we want to focus on a reinvention, a deconstruction? Finding out what that niche is and really honing in on that, because what I'm finding is that the customer base, if they're not looking for, a deal, which is really what's driving the diner today is really looking for those deals. They really want to understand the story behind the food, the story behind the people. And in most cases, it's not necessarily the story of the chef. It's the story of the people and the culture that you're presenting, and being able to bring people into that fold and let them feel as though they're a part of that story as well.
Yeah, well said. I know that my wife and I, it's financial tough times for a lot of people out there, being more careful of where we spend our money and wanting the experience behind it, right? It's one thing just to eat the food, but the experience. 2 quick questions. I know I'm getting yelled at because of the time. 2 quick questions I have to ask. You brought up a really good point. Leadership is so important, right? Where people think of leaders, the CEO of a company that has 1 million, workers, right? But really the kitchen needs that leader. And, different TV shows have shown that, right? Can someone be a successful chef if they are not an actual leader?
I do. So can someone be can someone be a successful chef if they're not a leader? There's always an exception to a rule.
Sure.
But I think that leadership is honestly more important than creativity in order to run a successful business and a successful kitchen.
Yeah, that's well said, because that's just a mindset for me of change of just how important that leadership is in all facets of a business, right? So including the restaurant world. Great. Last question. This will be a fun one for you.
All right.
You got 1 day left of all the menus and of all the recipes, everything that you've seen. What is your go-to very last meal that you are making or being prepared for you that you've seen on a menu?
All right. So this is like after this.
You're gone. But don't make that happen, right? But
yeah.
right.
So this is always like a fun chef question, right? And you'll hear a lot of chefs that will say, "Oh, my mom's bolognese," right?
Sure.
But it might not be necessarily restaurant worthy, but it has that comfort feel to it.
Well said.
For me, my last meal, I live a little bit dangerously. If I know I'm going to eat fugu, the poisonous blowfish, the whole thing, nose to tail, because you're gonna go. You might as well go.
That is a great. I remember that Homer Simpson episode, or the Simpsons episode where he ate that. So I haven't heard that from anyone before. Well said, Jackson. I'm so sorry for the time. I would love to keep talking to you in the future if you're okay with that.
Oh,
I'm
definitely.
sure there's a lot more we can unwrap. We have an onion to more unravel, or whatever that expression is. But
definitely. We just started touching on leadership. Leadership is a huge passion of mine, and that's
awesome.
There's a big pivot right now with what I'm doing consulting wise, focusing in on that.
Great.
And I'd love to be able to expand on that. Mondays work pretty well for me, so we can definitely.
Awesome. Sounds good. Let's get you back on then, Jackson. You rock. Thank you, brother.
All right. Thank you guys both.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Smeeple Podcast. And a huge thank you to Jackson Locklear for joining us. You too can talk to Jackson one-on-one via the Smeeple app. Get expertise in restaurant operations, menu development, training programs, leadership coaching, and wedding planning. But until then, we'll see you next time on the Smeeple Podcast.